here, Cisco Systems. I actually focus on e-marketing within Asia Pac, probably except Japan. Right now, key focus is mainly China. I think there are multiple things that's happening, and APAC is a hugely diverse landscape. We talk about just in simplicity, 7 languages that you need to deal with. Most countries, the big ones like China, Korea, they have their own key language portals. They even have their own search engine in that particular case. There is QQ Chat, an equivalent of MSN. And you talk about social media as a whole, as a trend. I think there are so many aspects of social media in APAC, and there are so many different portals. There's tons of millions of influencers, bloggers out there in each of the different countries that it's really challenging if you want to look at it in its entirety, as opposed to maybe Europe or US in that case, with 1 or 2 languages being the core. And that actually it's how I see APAC landscape, that's very much different from Europe and US. Just in terms of social media. I mean, being totally focused on the B2B landscape right now for Cisco. There are many niche portals, and these niche portals not just focus on the tier 1 regions or provinces or states, but across tier 2 and tier 3 states as well. And when we talk about conversations that we can leverage on from a demand generation point of view, if you look at it in its entirety, there are actually probably close to 1,000. And every single moment as we are speaking right now, there's probably somebody else talking about a particular product, doing either a product comparison, to asking for an opinion on the product, or even in the case looking for a solution without mentioning any products. In that particular case, going into each of one of these portals, I think I would always take a 3-step approach. 1, to understand what the entire buzz in the medium is about, and this would cross, I think, not just for China, but our engagement across the rest of the countries as well. From there, with the understanding, and with of course you need to prioritize what are the key portals you're gonna actually look at. You can't exactly go in and try to handle a good 1,000 of them, and of course there are different departments in Cisco that handle that. So in terms of demand generation wise, it is then critical to first understand the entire conversation and landscape, understand what are the top 10 sites you're going to use, and probably from there, you kind of have the engagement model. It could almost be a workflow, a yes or no, and I reckon most of the time you won't even engage the audiences at all, because after all, if it's a social network, I think it's very easy for consumers or even just users to identify that you might not be an interest person who just has interest, or an evangelist in that case, but you actually are representing a company. Nothing wrong with that if you are blatantly honest about it and you are putting out facts across. I think the tricky thing is then making sure that your communication is a well-structured one, and it's neutral enough not to create any sort of conflict. So we go then into the engagement. I think there are quite a few consumer companies who are in there, but a lot of the times when it comes to the B2B landscape, it's still rather tricky, because first off, aside from looking at the general base of the consumers that are at hand, there is then determining whether these are your potential customers, and if they are, or they could be potential influencers within your customer segments, and if they are, how are you going to engage them too? I think from the engagement factor, then you move on to sort of like I call it direct, if you could put it in any other way, to actually potentially seep out whether there are opportunities and leads or potential revenues that you can get from there. That's probably the trickiest part. I've always put it in a simplistic 3-step process, and right now as we work on China itself requires a lot more depth just on the first stage, just to understand and be able to determine their workflow, and engagement and direction comes after. We try to segment whatever conversations that in there, on my earlier note on whether they are product comparisons, whether are people looking for a specific product or service, or whether people are just generally talking about trends in the landscape. And when you look at all this conversation, you kind of need to be able to differentiate them. And in any company, big multinational company in that case, you will then have different departments. You have marketing, you have sales, you have PR, you've got even within your marketing departments, you've broken up into your brand team, your demand generation team. Now, which aspect of the conversation actually drives something that you're tagged to a KPI? That's something that we need to consider as well. And if you look at the entirety of all the different segments and the possible conversations there, that's why I said you will probably only end up engaging 10% of it that's within your domain, if I could put it that way. And in order to generate the optimized results from actually engaging them and actually getting some sort of registration information, I think social media in itself, most of the time people come in to gather info, to get an opinion, as opposed to looking to buy the product. They are very much in still I would say the upper end of the purchasing funnel. That's something that we need to be conscious of when we engage, because if we try to aggressively bring them into, for example, buy something from you within 3 replies, you might end up getting a real mess of conversation selling about how you're really pushing sales while you're actively engaging them, but instead you get negative feedback from their overall engagement. And that's something that I think besides the demand generation and the program team, so any company or any marketing team, it's actually something that we need to manage in terms of our brand reputation, as well as almost the PR influence in the market. Because ultimately the product might be good, but because you've engaged it wrongly at the start, so when the product first launched, it might in the end turn against you instead of for you, and instead of a whole bunch of people evangelizing for you, you actually get a whole bunch of advocates that are saying all sorts of things about how the sales are and the marketing is engaging, how the overall campaigns are rolling out in the different countries, and that's all pretty tricky. There's actually a lot of depth in that question, that if you probably put yourself on the wider landscape of things and you look at social media in its entirety to the consumers, whether it's B2B or B2C. If we think about it right now, I mean, the latest 2 articles that are out in the market, one, social media platforms like Facebook brings in more traffic to a campaign site or a program, as opposed to Google search, which we all of our mind as a normal consumer or even as a marketer you would expect otherwise. But if that's a phenomenon that's actually happening right now, that actually it is how important that media could be ultimately to you selling a product, or to you even convincing your customers or influencers that's important. So in that same domain or sphere of things, I would say it's almost equally, if not more important than some of the channels out there. And only time will tell. And I'm a firm believer that over time there won't be a segregation between what we call traditional online, offline altogether. That all of it might be just digital based. It has some sort of involvement required from the marketeers or the companies. We call it social media right now. It might just be a social way of marketing or social way of selling in that aspect, because everybody trusts the friend's opinion or the community's opinion, as opposed to just looking out for the advertiser's product specifications, and taking 2 tables and making a comparison on even any of the tech platform sites, and just in terms of electronics in that case. So that is one aspect of it, that how important social media may play and how you need to get in, as my earlier engagement suggested model. I don't think there's a foolproof way to do it. You engage, and every single time you engage in every different market in effect, you'll probably get a different response, and you'll probably need to rejig your entire workflow to get it to work. And that's something that I think all marketers who are interested to explore this domain need to be aware before they even step in. Now that's one aspect. The other thing I see coming is actually, I believe it will be a trend, and this will be the upcoming trend. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe even shorter in 2 years' time. That the other article that we've just recently seen is that Facebook as a platform it's the key social media platform that is sharing most of the content in the landscape, as other things like Twitter, MySpace, or even some of the local domain sites, for example, Naver in Korea. I mean, all these sites have the equivalent platform or modules that allows content sharing. And I think it will be interesting. Right now, the article doesn't quite compare the social media platform to social media platforms. Instead of comparing social media platforms to all the rest of the channels in the landscape, what would be really interesting, I think, to explore, and if there's an article in the landscape that actually says content sharing has now become more prominent in social media sites as opposed to specific content sharing sites that were developed in that case, things like Slideshare, things like Flickr. I actually do believe that it will all merge ultimately.
Okay.
And from a user point of view, there is only so much bandwidth, like to put it in a gig way, that we can actually look through, and that's why aggregators exist. And similar in the social media landscape from a consumer point of view, I see it probably merging over time, and you will only use one to do whatever sharing you want, whether it's video, whether it's photos, whether it's PowerPoint, whether it's work related, whether it's personal. Yes, there will be some virtual segregation within the entire spectrum, but in the end you'll probably only have one or two that you visit on a daily basis, or actively visit to read about the latest news, to understand about the latest product, or to even just in a general basis understanding about the activities that are happening in your interest groups, or whatever you choose within that landscape. So with those two propositions in mind, with those two visions in mind, it will actually allow us as marketeers to better understand where consumers are coming from. And I think it's we who try as marketeers to try to draw that line between business to business and business to consumers. Because if you ask me, as we look at the entire thing, everybody is in every one time in the day wearing different hats. So as the line blurs and as technology kind of totally engulfs us within all the different channels, and every day we see different things. At one point we are at work. Does that mean at work we are at the head of a business person? When our wife calls or when our children calls, we do not answer because we are right now maybe the CEO or MD of a company, and I answer to my employees, and we don't. And similarly, when we read about news, we only read about technology news, or do we read about what happens with our friends? Do we go to Facebook to take a look at the photos? And I think to be open to the entirety, is it easier to market to a business owner or a tech decision owner at the frame of mind where they are thinking about what solution to pick up? Or would it be better as and when they are actually engaging with their kids, the time they spend at home, and they happen to come across, or even their kids happen to come across something that's interesting? Say, for example, a viral campaign driving a particular product of interest, and to hear their kids mention something that actually has some significance in their own life. I think the influence is actually starting to blur, if not really blur in our current landscape, dependent on which era you live in. And I think the other latest interesting article that has come out is there are 12 million new users that are 35 years and older in Facebook, and that in itself kind of debunks the initial myth of us saying that the social media stuff, they are for kids. Unfortunately, I think it's here to stay. Even if it is for your kids, you're there because, like for example, in the latest IDA forum that they had in Singapore, you have parents attending all those forums, and the key advice is you need to get onto it yourself in order to understand what your kids are there for. And I think similarly, these are why adults engage the platform in an initial basis. But thereafter, as all different technologies and objective merges, and this becomes your core platform to monitor your kids, to think about what works for you, to have your business network connected to you, to have the relevant articles fit in, to have your interest groups fed into this entire Facebook profile, or it could be anything out there. It could be your neighbor profile. In China's case, it could be an entire QQ homepage. It could all just be there. It doesn't need to segregate in this case anymore. And so why then, I would ask ourselves as marketeers, as advertisers, why then are we putting that segregation in when the consumers don't really see it that way?